Hello, everybody. Justin from Stillness in the Storm here. We're going to go ahead and review this article I wrote called The Psychology of Truth Sharing and Awakening Others with a Personal Anecdote. And this is actually an article that I wrote based on another article that was released called Now That You've Awakened, How Do You Awaken Others? So I basically took a lot of the points that were in this first article and kind of gave my own take on them. So I'm just going to read my section for this video. And I apologize for not having perfect speaking when I'm reading these things, but I'm going to do my best. Alright, so let's give it a shot here. Sharing information with others is usually one of the first things we want to do after starting to wake up. But knowing the path and walking the path are two different things. The following is an article detailing some general techniques for sharing the truth, along with some things to avoid. The truth is transformative and belligerent by nature. It doesn't care about our feelings or our emotions. It comes in and shakes us to our foundations. As a result, when we share our truth with others, we offer them an opportunity to change, but they don't have to accept it, and often they won't. By this I mean, we can't really wake someone else up. We can't force them to see what we see or to understand what we do. All we can do is offer them a chance to unlock the truth for themselves, and this requires patience and collective participation. A present or gift is a good analogy for this process. We can take the time to think carefully about what someone wants. We can spend hours shopping for that perfect thing, wrapping it with beautiful paper, and introducing it in a nice way. But in the end, the person we give this to has to accept it. They have to tear open the wrapping paper, peel back the plastic, and explore its contents for themselves. Sharing the truth is the same way. At best, we're only presenting something that someone can either accept or refuse, and this fact should not be overlooked, even though it often is. I actually wrote an addendum to this section that's at the bottom that's going to kind of review the same general concept again, but more in a personal focus, so we'll talk about that in a moment. Early on in my truth-sharing adventures, I foolishly thought that if I could only data dump someone, they would know what I do and be empowered. And I certainly tried this approach with everyone I met. I was the "I'm going to change your life in 5 minutes" guy. If I didn't cause your mind to explode and invigorate your lust for freedom and truth, I considered myself a total failure. At the time, I was working at a call center for AOL Tech Support with over 60 people in my queue. I was speaking to colleagues and customers every day, looking for any chance I could to inject my beliefs in, often without invitation. I'm sure most will agree that this method isn't very effective. What I learned is that out of the hundreds of people I spoke to, only a handful, literally, were willing to listen to me, and this was probably because they were already on their path of awakening. After feeling like a complete and total failure, I decided to go back to my roots of psychology to understand what was happening. I quickly realized that the source of my problems was not because I didn't have good information to share, or because I lacked drive and motivation. It was because I didn't have their consent. The person wasn't opening the gift of truth I spent so many hours wrapping. And admittedly, I didn't nurture a calm, loving space to receive this gift, which resulted in self-defensive reactions and closed-mindedness and fear. I was acting more like a truth fundamentalist instead of a kind-hearted partner in the quest for gaining knowledge and wisdom. After some research, I realized that a person's worldview or belief system is the basis for their perception of reality, which is put at risk by receiving new information. The mere act of being exposed to novel concepts, ideas, and information have a powerful effect on somebody's consciousness, and this should not be taken lightly, especially when the truth I was trying to share was worldview shattering. What if someone walked up to you and said they had information that would completely change your views of reality? What if the beliefs that kept you feeling safe and secure were threatened by someone else's point of view? In essence, this is exactly what sharing the truth does, especially the information that the awakening community or the truther movement is trying to transmit. Due to the fact that trauma is usually the first thing we experience when coming into this world, followed by a lifetime of countless hardships and social pressures, most of us have developed a very close-minded and rigid worldview as a defense mechanism. Furthermore, through social engineering techniques or mass mind control, we've been trained to fear anything that does not seem normal or socially acceptable. Critical thinking and honest inquiry have been stamped out in favor of blind belief in experts and authorities. All of this ensures that the vast majority of the population is not intellectually or emotionally equipped to handle information that doesn't resonate with their beliefs. Therefore, the process of sharing consciousness-expanding information must take into account an individual's capacity to receive it. Psychologically, the mind can't receive new information in a productive way in a state of fear. Even if a few nuggets of data do make it through, they won't be contemplated or understood very well. By this I mean, in our desire to share our truths, we can't become like religious fundamentalists. We must be the perfect parent who unselfishly provides love and support, regardless if our truth is accepted or not. In this way, the individual's fear of social rejection or abandonment can be healed, slowly developing a space of unconditional love where curiosity and inquisitiveness can blossom. Sharing a truth someone has already refused to accept typically causes a defensive response, and due to social programming, most of the truths we want to share have already been labeled as conspiracy theory BS. But fear responses can be triggered by other cues as well. Fear responses must be recognized so that productive discourse can take place. During a fear response, the R complex or hindbrain goes into action, flooding the body with a chemical soup of fear, epinephrine, pulling blood away from the neocortex, thinking rational brain, and filling our body with adrenaline so as to take action. This creates an environmental condition in the body that greatly limits an individual's capacity to think rationally, a state of emotional turbulence that triggers traumatic defensiveness. As a result, any truth we want to share that causes this reaction will be avoided, denied, or rejected with the same intensity one uses to defend themselves from attack, because to them, they are being attacked. Let me just pause for a moment and focus on this image. This image I have here I thought was really appropriate because in my own experience, in my early days of trying to share the truth with people, I look back and I think of myself like this, like I'm almost trying to scold somebody into compliance and force them to accept my beliefs, which isn't going to be a productive method for them actually receiving it, nor is it going to empower them because now they're just telling me something I want to hear instead of actually openly receiving the wisdom I'm trying to offer. So I thought this image was pretty poignant. Let's continue. A topic or subject matter can automatically trigger the defensive reaction we're discussing, but not in all cases. For example, have you ever tried to tell a doctor about cures for cancer? As soon as they know what you're about to say, their defenses usually go up, and once that happens, it will be almost impossible to break through them. This can be incredibly frustrating and often causes us to feel invalidated, triggering anger and resentment, neither of which will help the situation. When we notice ourselves feeling defensive, angry, or unkind as a result of someone's reaction to our sharing, arguably the best course of action is to stop and walk away. Allow the subject to change or simply move on knowing you did your best, and learn from what happened so you can be more tactical in the future. Because truth sharing really is like a tactical process. It's not just a power your way through it. You have to take in many factors and things to consider, just like creating a perfect dish or recipe or writing a perfect piece of music. It takes careful consideration and skill. So let's continue. Furthermore, communication is 80% nonverbal, which is another way of saying subtle and emotional. Our emotional states are communicated via subtle physiological processes that another person's subconscious can easily detect. The tone of our voice, our body language, even the clothes we wear all send subtle messages to the subconscious, the part of our mind that is responsible for triggering different states of being. In other words, if you're angry, judgmental, intolerant, or lack confidence, someone else will pick up on this and react accordingly. Before you even open your mouth to say hello, a person's subconscious can be triggered into a defensive reaction by way of our emotional state, if it is not harmonious. All these things and more can complicate and completely derail our efforts to awaken others. And as mentioned earlier, this feedback often makes us feel disillusioned and unmotivated. Anyone who's tried to share information they were passionate about but didn't feel they were heard knows how much of a blow this can do to our sense of well-being and our desire to continue the outer work. What's the solution? As the below article implies, it's all about patience, compassion, and creating a space of unselfish love for the other person and yourself. I know these things might sound like hippie love talk, but as we just discussed, someone in a state of fear isn't capable of processing new information properly. Their brain literally isn't firing in a way that says, "Yes, I want to know." And it's this genuine curiosity that is needed in order for the truth we want to share to have a meaningful impact. Therefore, the first goal of any truth sharing process is to develop rapport, or a relationship where the other person feels safe and vulnerable enough to receive what we're offering. There are many techniques for achieving this, but generally speaking, because people are not educated on how to think critically or logically, developing emotional rapport is a great place to start. In short, you can't share intellectual knowledge with a child who can't understand these things. And the plain truth is that most people are like mental children. They simply lack the capacity to think logically and rationally. Not that this makes them any less human or worthy of our wisdom. For example, instead of firing off your nuggets of truth right away, develop a truly loving and accepting relationship. Ask a person what their interests are and share information in those areas first. And always do so in a non-confrontational way. The more genuine you are in developing this relationship, the more you'll actually care about another person's well-being and emotional state. The firmer the emotional foundation developed through your interactions, the more likely that someone will feel calm enough to consider your wisdom. Also, take care to let someone's curiosity develop freely. This is very important. If we're feverishly pounding ideas into someone's head too quickly, even though they are open to them, it is not likely they'll have a chance to become curious. But it is that inner desire for more understanding, curiosity, that allows new information to be explored and integrated in a productive way. Without this internal drive, data received will become like a random fact with no meaning. Allowing someone to discover the mysteries of life and explore them like a child explores the world is the ideal state of being we should be trying to cultivate. All of this takes time and patience, often meaning the topic or data point you want so much to share won't be delivered until that person is genuinely interested. But once that happens, the feeling of inspiration both you and another person experience during such an exchange will be far more rewarding for all involved, not to mention the fact that it will honor their free will. We need to make them feel safe and accepted regardless of what they do, even if they reject our truth. This is what true unconditional love is all about. And in most cases, you'll be the first person to ever love them unselfishly, which takes time to come to terms with. One way to do this is to listen to someone else before trying to share. Often just truly listening to someone honestly makes them feel loved and accepted. It doesn't really matter what they are talking about either. In other words, we need to offer emotional healing in the form of unselfish love first. And then, once the heart is healed, the mind will open, but not before. What do I mean by unselfish love? I say that we want to let others know we love and accept them, even if they reject our truth. Even if they react defensively and call us names, we should do our best to love them just as much as a mother loves their child. The more we do this, the greater the emotional support that is provided and the more openness is engendered. All of this is a process of honoring another person's free will, sharing our wisdom in a harmless and humble way. Ultimately, the goal of all truth sharing is to provide knowledge in the form and measure someone is capable of receiving. It is the art of attenuation, wherein data is shared in the conceptual language with which a person is capable of understanding it. Laying the foundation for attenuation is the art of gauging someone's receptiveness, their willingness to listen, which, as we said earlier, requires emotional rapport. From here, sharing data or information itself can be done, but in a way that is tailor-made for that person. This method requires that you, the person with knowledge, know it very well. You should understand your truth so clearly that you can look at it from 1,000 different angles and sides, and present it in a unique way for each person, always looking for signs so as to gauge their willingness to listen. Be patient and wise. Finally, and this one is hard for some to accept, you don't have to share all your truth at once. Did you come to know everything you do now in 10 minutes? Were you completely open-minded when your awakening began? Probably not. The fact is, most of us spent the majority of our lives avoiding the truth or being blissfully ignorant of it, and when it was offered, we were in a state of rejection. I know I did. Given this, can we really expect others to act differently? Sometimes the best thing you can do to help others in the awakening experience is to not share your truth yet. As was mentioned earlier, building rapport and a positive, nurturing relationship is key for productive truth sharing. And this sometimes means holding off on your passionate truths till another person is ready. Be wise with your sharings. Learn how to read body language and determine when someone else's mind has been closed and they're just being polite by listening to you. Learn to tell when you're triggered and spend the time needed to regain composure before sharing the truth. Remember, if the emotional foundation isn't there, if both of you don't feel loved and supported, it probably won't be a productive exchange. So let me just emphasize that by saying, if you're feeling yourself getting emotionally upset because somebody isn't receiving the truth that you personally have a lot of investment in, then it's probably time to take a step back and regain composure. As a final note, I often remind myself that waking up to the truth is like climbing a mountain. Everyone's on the same mountain together, but there are many paths to the top. The farther you progress, the more you can see. Sometimes people wait around halfway up before finding the courage to continue on, and that's okay. The mountain will always be there. A seed can't be forced to grow. It does so only when the season is right. The truth is an infinitely large and expansive thing that transcends everything we can imagine. It waited all your life for you to find it, and with all the patience of the universe to draw from. And so, in our efforts to share the truth, we must be patient, compassionate, and wise, like the truth. The fact that our friends and fellows fuel the matrix of control makes us feel that sharing the truth itself is a defensive reaction, and in a way it is. But if someone isn't willing to hear it, we can't force them to. When faced with this situation, the better option is to defend oneself from the harmful actions of others using honorable and non-aggressive means. The price of direct confrontation with someone often means the pathway of sharing is now closed. So be careful and pick your battles wisely, in other words. I say this because I don't want to imply that we must be passive when dealing with our ignorant fellows who agree to tyranny and slavery without knowing it. The path of the razor's edge comes to mind in that our task as awakened and sovereign beings is to honor the truth and stop harm when we see it, but at the same time not harm others in the process. Patience is required here, as often we don't know the best way to stop harm without also causing more problems in the future, and yet we need to be willing to try and learn from our experience as we navigate through life's changes. So don't be afraid to share your truth or stop someone from harming others, if need be. Just do so with compassion and knowing that everyone is always doing the best they can with what they have to work with. With a little love and farsightedness, even the hardest truths can be shared. One of the best ways to show others the wisdom of the truth is to embrace it fully ourselves, leading by example and showing others through wise action what a life of truth-seeking has to offer. And here's my addendum here, which again is, I'm going to repeat a lot of things, but it's going to be in an emphasis from our personal perspective, which I'm going to get into. I realized that after reading this article through again for editing, that I wanted to add a point that, for me, helps me stay balanced and centered. Because again, being balanced and centered is very important. The awakening experience is personal. We can only be responsible for ourselves. While we can and should certainly try to awaken others, at best we can only offer them our wisdom and perspectives. We can't force anyone to wake up, again as I said earlier. Our focus should be on maintaining our balance, never letting the desire to help another throw us off our path. In a way, this is a huge relief, as many of us can sometimes feel a desperate need to try and stir others out of their slumber. And to be sure, the fact that so many people are asleep makes our lives harder and allows tyranny and suffering to flourish. But the only person we have almost total control over is ourselves. Everyone else is just another player in the game, so to speak. Usually, when we try to overextend ourselves and force someone to accept our point of view, this is when we lose balance and composure, which doesn't help anyone. Thus, keep trying to help others awaken, and most importantly, don't forget about yourself. Waking up isn't like turning on a light switch. It is a process that requires constant vigilance, work, and maintenance, while also being one of the greatest joys in life. Just when we think we've discovered some ultimate truth, there is another layer to explore and reconcile into our understanding. From what I've come to understand, the truth is an infinite and all-encompassing reality, the total of all that was, all that is, and all that will ever be. Therefore, no matter how much knowledge of the truth we have claimed, there will always be an infinitely vast amount waiting to be discovered. We mustn't become lazy or inactive in our awakening experience, and learn to be humble so that we can receive the wisdom of others. I often say that we are all in this together, and that truth-seeking and sharing is a group process. This means that we should not ever fall into the trap of thinking we have all the answers, for time and space limits our perspective. We can recognize that we might have knowledge others do not, but we should not see ourselves as authorities to be worshipped, or that they do not have perspectives and wisdom to offer us in return. Even though it would be nice to snap our fingers and magically wake up the whole planet, the only person you can really be responsible for is yourself. So take solace in knowing that our primary focus should be on furthering our own evolution, while also entering the co-creative enterprise of collective truth-seeking. And as a final note, I'm just going to go ahead and read this image I made, which is about divination, which is essentially the art of truth, discernment, and understanding through the allegory of reading tea leaves. So the tea leaves of life can be found at the bottom of any cup, but only those who drink deep enough to empty the glass will find the wisdom beneath the surface. And essentially what I'm describing there is that we have to be willing to go all the way. Truth seeking isn't just about finding a yes or no answer and then leaving it at that, because even that's only one step up the mountain. And as it's said in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which I think is filled with a lot of wisdom, and I strongly suggest people to try to decipher it, our goal of finding the ultimate truth will never be fully accomplished. We'll always be making strides and working our way up the mountain. And in a way that can be very empowering and I think can be uplifting, because it means there's always going to be more mystery, intrigue, and things to discover. There's never going to be a point where we've got all the answers, and in which case life kind of becomes boring. I want to thank everybody for listening. Stillness in the Storm is a viewer and reader supported enterprise and effort, so I greatly appreciate the contributions that you have to offer. For the price of a cup of coffee or meal, you can help keep this work going on a monthly basis. And anything above and beyond that also helps make the work possible for those who can't contribute. And if you do not have the extra cash to throw our way, you can always click on advertisements you find value in, and this sends a little bit of income our way. And this is true for other people in the alternative media as well. Advertising is one of the ways that the alternative media stays alive. So by clicking on advertisements of other people and YouTubers, you help support them. So thanks again for listening. This is Justin from Stillness in the Storm signing off, and be well on your path.